All right, let's take a journey to the absolute edges of our world. We're talking about the frontiers of isolation on our planet, places so far out that the very idea of help just completely starts to break down. When you think of the most remote place on Earth, what pops into your head? Probably the top of Mount Everest, right? Or maybe deep in the Amazon, or the heart of Antarctica. Well, I'm here to tell you it's none of those. The real answer? It isn't a place you can even stand on. It's a very specific, calculated coordinate, right in the middle of a huge empty ocean. But that's really only half the story. And here it is. This is the part that will absolutely bend your mind. If you were floating at this exact spot, the closest people to you would not be on a ship, not on some distant shore, no. They'd be orbiting 400 kilometers straight up in the International Space Station. And that's not an exaggeration. That is a cold, hard mathematical fact. So this just makes you ask the question, what is true remoteness? It turns out that our gut feeling for it, cold, wilderness, danger, that's not really the definition at all. So this is where we have to reframe the whole concept. We usually think of remoteness as an emotional thing, right? That feeling of being alone in a hostile place. But the true practical definition, it's all about logistics. It's about time, distance, and pure geometry. It's the stark, simple calculation of how long it would take for a rescue team to get to you. And in a world that feels smaller and smaller every day, that number is a pretty terrifying and very real measure of our limits.
Okay, so let's start with our first destination. This is the place we were just talking about, and it's not a discovery in the usual sense. It's a calculation. Welcome to Point Nemo. Its official name is the Oceanic Pole of Inaccessibility, and honestly, that name is just perfect. It is the single point in any ocean that is mathematically, provably, the absolute farthest you can get from any piece of land. And to really wrap your head around its isolation, you have to appreciate the perfect geometry of where it is. To the north, the nearest landmass is Bouvet Island, a teeny-tiny uninhabited atoll, a staggering 2,688 kilometers away. Okay, now turn to the northeast. You'll find Motu Nui, which is a small islet near Easter Island. And the distance to that piece of land is, you guessed it, exactly the same, 2,688 kilometers. And finally, if you look south, towards the coast of Antarctica, the nearest bit of land is Bouvet Island. And that distance is, one more time, 2,688 kilometers. This is no coincidence. It is the geometric bullseye of oceanic isolation. And this, right here, just brilliantly captures the scale we're dealing with. I mean, the ISS orbits at about 400 kilometers up. The nearest town on land is over 2,600 kilometers away. It's a really profound thought. In this spot, looking up is closer than looking out. But this empty, abstract point in the ocean has a very, very strange and modern purpose. Because even though it's the most naturally isolated place on Earth, it's actually become a focal point for humanity's presence in space. Yeah, this is where we send our space tech to die. Since the 70s, space agencies have aimed their de-orbiting satellites right here, precisely because it's so far away from anyone. Russia's famous Mir space station ended its journey here, and yep, the International Space Station is scheduled for the exact same fate. So the seabed of the most remote place on Earth has become a silent graveyard for some of our greatest technological achievements. So we've just seen isolation that's defined by pure abstract distance, by geometry. But there's a whole other kind of remoteness, one that's defined not by empty space, but by physical, brutal resistance. So now let's talk about Bouvet Island. If Point Nemo is this unseen, empty void, Bouvet Island is its total opposite. It's an almost unreachable thing, a volcanic fortress that's just locked in ice, and it's considered the most remote island on the entire planet. I mean, just look at what makes this place so impossible to get to. It's not just far away, it actively fights you off. Almost the entire island is one giant glacier that just plunges straight into the sea with these sheer cliffs. The weather is a constant, brutal barrage of storms. Just trying to get a boat close to shore is a huge challenge, and actually landing on it, that's an incredibly rare event. But here's the beautiful paradox. The exact same hostility that keeps humans away, that's what makes Bouvet Island an irreplaceable sanctuary for wildlife. With zero introduced predators, it's just this thriving haven for enormous colonies of penguins and a vital breeding ground for several species of seals. For them, the island's resistance is its protection. And, just to add another layer of intrigue, this island is also at the center of a Cold War mystery. Back in 1979, a U.S. satellite detected this double flash of light from the area, the telltale signature of a nuclear test. To this day, nobody has ever claimed responsibility. The whole event is still officially unexplained, which just deepens the island's enigmatic vibe. Okay, so we visited a void in the middle of the ocean and a fortress made of ice. But these places, they aren't just geographical oddities. They really hold up a mirror to our modern world and all of our assumptions about it. So, what can we really learn from the fact that places like this still exist? Places where our global network of safety and connectivity just stops? What do they tell us about our own limits? Okay, so here's the big takeaway. We live our lives with this assumption that technology has shrunk the globe, that it's made everyone and everywhere reachable. But Point Nemo and Bouvet Island are hard, physical proof that this just isn't completely true. A satellite can see you, sure, but it can't defy the laws of the ocean to get a rescue ship to you any faster. In the end, physics still has the final say. And that reality creates this profound psychological shift. For the very few scientists or sailors who actually go into these zones, there's this constant, heightened sense of awareness. Every single decision you make carries more weight because you know with absolute certainty that if something goes wrong, you are on your own. Help isn't just delayed, it's practically a theoretical concept. And that leaves us with one last thought to chew on. In an age where we're trying so hard to map, connect, and control every single corner of our world, what is the value of these last few places that still resist us? Maybe their true worth isn't about what we can do there, but in the simple, humbling fact that they remind us of the planet's true scale, its power, and the last true distances that still really, really matter.